Welcome to the Business of Thinking podcast. This is the place for high achievers who want more than motivation. They want mastery. Here we skip the surface level talk and go straight into the psychology of high performance.
Hello and welcome to the Business of Thinking. My name is Richard Reed and I've got the great pleasure today of being joined by Aubrey Brooks. Aubrey is an author with a really interesting backstory. Aubrey, great to have you here.
Lovely to be with you, Richard.
And Aubrey and I know each other from quite a while ago. We actually met over a garden gate, didn't we? Fixing a garden gate on the Isle of Man, but that's a story for another time. But Aubrey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Richard, I'm sort of an ordinary kind of guy. And I really think that my whole life was molded or set, my path and direction in life was established by my parents at a very early age. I had a mother who always believed in all her children and instilled upon us that everything is possible. You're no different to anybody else. You've got the same faculties. So if they can do it, you can do it. Sometimes it's harder. Sometimes it's easy to do that. So my life started off like that, with a lot of love from my mom and a lot of belief. So going through school, I found it very easy. School is very, very easy, particularly junior school, where I was head boy, captain of the house, captain of the cricket team, captain of the athletics team, all that kind of stuff, And it just fell very easily in my lap. I then went to senior school, and I think from a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a big pond was a big step at senior school. I seemed to have lost my way academically, but threw myself into sport, which actually saved my bacon at the end of the day because they needed a hooker in the first team rugby team, and I became that. So I sported my way through that. But and I think that was it. But my father, when he came back from the war, I was born in 1944, so it was at the end of the war, and all things were new in Rhodesia. Everything was possible, but my father was an engineer, so he built his own powerboat, which I had to race in the junior events. I think he did that more for punishment than for joy. But I became quite adept at racing the powerboats, and then he built a micro midget, and he raced the senior events and made me race the junior events. And I think that's what instilled in me this need for speed. I became a petrolhead at that stage, and that continued all through my life. But I had a very good. Not that my father was very wealthy, but after the war, anyone who turned their hand to work hard was amply rewarded. Unfortunately, today it's not quite the same thing, but I was born at the right time, in the right place, and everything just sort of came good. I then became, after leaving school, my biggest desire was to become a pilot and join the Air Force. So before leaving school, I did the aptitude test, passed it, and was told to come and start on the 1st of February 1960. Well, I got to the New Serum Air Force Base, sat down and made myself comfortable with the OC. And he said he thinks there'd been a mistake on my application form. So I asked him why, and he said, "You were born in 43, weren't you?" And I said, "No, 44. He says, "Oops, you'll have to go back to school for another year." It was to take something like 40 years before I was to learn to fly an aeroplane, but I never gave up on the hope. So I went back and got myself a position as a motor mechanic, and I'll never forget my father saying, "You get a proper job." So I said, "What's a proper job?" He says, "Printing." So I had no idea what printing was all about, and I became a printer. But it was a good choice for me because the printing industry was a very well-paying job at that stage and plenty of overtime. And that was what helped me for my motor racing career because I was working plenty of overtime, making lots of money. There's a chap in work with me, Alec, McDonald, and he and I used to vie every week for the highest salary, so you could break the record for most. And after your first 10 hours or 15 hours, it was double time, and so we were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the only time I didn't work was when I went to race. So that is how my life developed from there. Then went into a very much later stage into the army. So I found my life very simple at the beginning, very easy to get through, and I still have this incredible belief, and I think it's borne out by what my mom had instilled in us. But I think you've got to temper that with a little bit of, it's no good telling your child, yeah, you're great, you'll do everything and no problem. And when you make a mistake, they said, don't worry, keep going. You must be tempered with a little bit of common sense and bringing back to reality. Otherwise, it gets shot away. But over my life, I've found it incredible. Whatever I've done, I do it very, very well. And it comes fairly easy, I think, because of the belief inside. Sometimes you've got to train a bit harder, but and it's just a wonderful spiral to get on, because if you have that trajectory in life, you don't feel inhibited or maybe I can't. It's I can. It's a can-do outlook to have in life, and I think that's very good for anybody and whatever they're doing. Just to have a belief in yourself, and once that ball starts rolling down that alley, it gathers momentum, and it's really. I honestly feel like right now there's nothing I've tried that I haven't managed to get up in the plus side of the 50% of people who do it, and know that if I had stayed with that, I would have become really, really good at it. But yeah, and I think one of the things, having a feeling of belief, I look back at my school days, and I was one of the guys that sat in the class when the master said to you, or your teacher said to you, do you understand it? And if I didn't understand it, I stuck my hand up. Most people
That's
don't do that.
so true, isn't it?
They would rather
pride gets in the way.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think I found that in the long term that paid dividends all through my life, whether it was in the army, motor racing, whatever. I always, if I wasn't sure, I asked. And I have this, if I look at something and I'm going through a building, I see a door there, and I think, I wonder what's behind there. I'm one of the nosy buggers that'll go and open the door and see what's behind there. I don't let things go past. And all the things that I see in life, the more you do, the more you have a thirst for adventure. I mean, a bungee jump, bridge jump, you name it. And the great thing is that the more you do it, the more comfortable you are doing it, and the more that your belief system grows, the wider your spectrum is about what you look at in life around you, the more you can absorb. I don't know that would work for everybody, but I often used to think about people that came along and they have a single role in life, and they may have one hobby, and I don't decry that at all. I think it's brilliant if you can do that, and it does satisfy your thirst for what you're doing. That's wonderful. But I found myself in a broad outlook of life, all sorts of things, all sorts of sports, some outlandish things, climbing Sydney Harbour Bridge, and all those things just come sort of naturally. And it makes for a well-rounded, I feel comfortable in my skin. You meet a lot of people by doing what I do. And it's just great fun. It does have a drawback, though, coming from a place in Rhodesia where all this was possible. And then after UDI, we had to relocate. Mugabe kicked us out the country, so I was in the military, had to relocate to South Africa. And after about a year and a half of adjustment, I could manage to do the same thing all over again. But when you come to a little place like the Isle of Man, and you're sitting down in the pub on a Friday night, and somebody walks in, and you get introduced to him, and you get chatting, and Next minute, we're talking about sailing. I ocean raced yachts for 10 years. So we talk about sailing. And that's marvelous. But the following Friday, there could be a bloke in there who's a pilot. And so you talk about airplanes, and you talk about you to fly on the Cherokee 180. And then that happens twice. That's all right. But the next time, suddenly you can see everyone looking at you sideways because they don't comprehend.
Yeah.
Coming from where we have all this opportunities, and they're freely available. In a place like there, I found myself keeping quiet, coming into myself rather than engage in every conversation because I became a bit of a know-all, And that's a wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're living in a new island, a new place. But it's settled down now, and I mean, I on this island I run most of the beach festivals and Bobby Moore charity golf days and all sorts of stuff, So but the part of all of that is the belief in yourself, because the more you do in life, the easier it becomes, and the more flexible you become.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more you're open to new ideas.
Absolutely.
And that just grows itself all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned about early life being quite easy, and you mentioned that the mindset you developed over time. I want to bring the story forward a little bit now, because you've written a book about this, about your experiences being a prisoner in the Seychelles. And I'm guessing some of these qualities really sort of stood you in good stead when you were in that situation. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about your experience in the Seychelles and what happened from there?
Yeah, I think it's probably good for me to backtrack a little bit, because my whole life I've been a committed Christian. And I found that during the Rhodesian Bush War, I had a parting of ways with the church, not with God. Does that make sense to you? Because the missionaries were fixing up and repairing the wounded of the terrorists, feeding them. And these are the guys that were blowing up ladies on farms and children and things like that. So I couldn't reconcile that whole thing. So I stepped away from the church, but not from God. And that, beyond any shadow of doubt, is what brought me through the Seychelles scenario.
Okay.
So would you like me to go back at the beginning of how I got involved with the Seychelles scenario?
Yes, please.
Okay, I had, as I said earlier, I'd forcibly relocated to South Africa, and I found a position there. I didn't know anybody in the country, so I found a position as a car salesman. I had my wife and 2 kids with us, 2 sons, and we started off working in a place called Imams and Toti, in this little car sales place that I was doing. And like I said earlier on, your ideas and your hunger to make things successful. I was doing things out of the box that other salesmen weren't doing. I found that by opening up on a Saturday morning and having a little barbecue going there, people come down, have a bite of sausage or chat with me. And I was signing up all these orders, and I just was outselling everybody. But what they did was they kept upping my
targets.
What do you call it? So my benchmark kept moving every week, from 5 cars and 2 used cars to suddenly 9 cars and 8. And I was very, very unhappy. I loved the job. I loved the work I was doing. But every week, having these goalposts moved and moved and moved and moved, it was constantly just a way of keeping my salary at a more manageable thing. And back in Rhodesia, I used to train the Rhodesian paraplegic team. We had a lot of casualties during the Rhodesian Bush War. And we had a place called Richwood Park. And a very good friend of mine, who is still to this day, I think we met in the army in 1960. But Wally asked me one day, would I come down and help with the training of the paraplegics, check the gym out? Well, I got involved there, boots and all. I ended up training and managing the Rhodesian team for the South African Games and things like that. But at that point in my life, I you could see your life around you, and sadly, a lot of my good friends in the army in Rhodesia were left maimed, legs blown off, and things like that. And we became very, very good friends. And one of the guys that I was working on is a chap called Des, and his son was already married and living in Durban. And when he heard I was unhappy, he asked me to come and have a meeting with a chap called Glenn Eslick. So I met Glenn, and he said, "Look, I believe you're a printer." And I said, "That's right." He said, "We'll buy come with the accountant." So I went off with him and had a look at this little print shop. It was a guy who had just been left a large amount of money in businesses and homes, and the job he had on the printing machine, he just switched it off. So when I got there, it was just everything was jammed. The rollers were in. So I didn't know too much about what I was doing, because I was a bookbinder, ruler cutter, and this was an actual printing job. So I said to the guy, "Oh, this can be fixed." So he says, "Okay, let's go back." And Glenn Eslick said to me, "Aubrey, do you want this? Do you think you can make this work?" So I said, "Yeah." He said, "Good, because it's yours. I'm buying it." And I said, "I don't have money, and I just don't have that kind of money." And he says, "No, you work it off." He had 4 companies do all their printing. In under a year, I had actually built this, paid him back all the money, and built a company called Mr. Printer. My wife and myself and the eldest son. And it got to a point where it was just we were working 7 days a week. I quickly realized that in order to make a success in printing, you had to deliver on your dates. How long? Ready for Tuesday. So whatever happens, Tuesday, that job had to be there. Became very successful. Put this business up for sale, and another company came and saw my business, and they said yes, they'd like to buy it. Came back a day later and said they'd rather incorporate me into their business and become the works director. Well, it was too good to be true, and my wife Di said to me, "Don't touch him. I don't like that man." It's a good opportunity for us, Must give. I was tired of all the work. Well, 7 months down the road, the ink supplier used to come and get the orders for us every month or so. Came to me one morning. He said, "Well, what's the problem? You haven't paid your bill for 4 months." So I said, "What are you talking about?" So anyhow, I quickly went into. He came up, got the figures out for me, and I went and challenged the company, and they had done this. The financial director had hoodwinked everybody, not only me, his own mother-in-law. Took her home, and so we lost everything. Wow. Home, cars, the lot, business, all gone. And it was just after that happened that I was approached by a chap to meet with Mike Hall, the colonel for the mercenaries. And I had a meeting with him, a brief meeting. Met about 3 days later, and then the whole chance of overthrowing the government in Seychelles. I didn't know at the time it was Seychelles, but the reason being was that the Seychelles government was about to curtail all the landing rights for aircraft traveling around that part of the world. The Americans needed the tracking station, so they were involved in this episode. The British needed bunkering facilities in Seychelles. And of course, De Garcia was also just off in that part of the ocean. So there was a lot of governments involved in this effort to overthrow the government. The government had been pro Western civilization for many, many years, but the incoming government had overthrown the Western side, and they become very socialist. So this offer was made to me. It was like £20,000 for 2 weeks' work. The whole exercise was going to be about 2 weeks.
Famous last words.
Yeah. But it's funny. My wife said to me, whatever you're doing, when I was in the army, whatever I was doing externally would be called a funny, because you don't let your family know what's happening, because for their own safety, you know. And she said, whatever you do, make sure it's not against Zimbabwe or Rhodesia. And it was Zimbabwe, should I say? And I said, no. So I said, why? She said, well, it's the only place that you can be had for treason. I'll come back and rectify that a bit later. But I had a meeting with Mike, and there was 7 of us at the meeting, and they needed 6 of us to go as the advance party to check the information we had from the underground movement in the Seychelles, plus also to take our weapons through. The highly dangerous thing we did, because we couldn't get the weapons delivered to the Seychelles. We had to take them through with us. So it went through in the false bottom in our case. The weapon was stripped down, put in K-Light, and the bags were sewn professionally so you didn't look like there was anything in there. And before I knew it, off we went. I could touch on something else over here just for a second. When things had gone so bad for me, somebody said to me, why don't you go and see a clairvoyant? So I said, a clairvoyant? What they going to do? He said, no, they'll tell you what's happening in your future. Anyhow, I went to this clairvoyant for the first time, and I must admit, what she did tell me, I found very uncanny. So I tried to find a reasonable explanation how she knew all this. Nothing came out. And she said to me, the one part where I really didn't believe her, she said, very shortly you'll be going overseas. Now, I knew at that stage I didn't have a penny in my pocket.
Thinking, how
was I going to get going overseas? How's that going to happen, you know? And she said, but you don't worry, you will come back. And that you're going overseas, and don't worry, you will come back. It's a strange thing to say, you know. So, cut a long story short, I was part of the advance party. There were 6 of us, and we flew over to test getting our weapons in through the airport, and then check all the information that the underground movement had given us.
And how are you feeling at this time? Because it's quite a bold step. Were you nervous?
Well, in the Rhodesian army, I was a special forces guy in a unit called the Sulu Scouts. So you train for this, you know. And I had plenty of time to think what my motives were, because I used to do a lot of, and I'm starting again now, speaking to Christian organizations and police and prisons and military, and I often get asked this question, what made you do it? And I think 3 things make you do something like what I did there. It's either money, the belief in the cause, or the excitement. And I think, depending where you feel on your moral compass, everyone would like to say, because I believe the cause, but I did believe the cause. The money, yes, I certainly needed it, but I was highly trained, and it was something I'm used to, and I enjoy that challenge. So once again, it all happened in a matter of 2 weeks. I was on the plane and flying off to Seychelles. The incredible thing is that I remember sitting in the aircraft flying in there, and then we met some people on the aircraft. My cover was a guy called Ken Dalglish, who was a hotel owner in Durban, and he was looking for a hotel in the Seychelles, and I was his bag man, his right-hand man. So that was our cover. And the people we met there were saying, they were on honeymoon. They said, wouldn't it be lovely if there was a coup here while we're here? Well, you know, the hair in the back of your neck prickles up a little bit. You didn't need to have that sort of conversation on the way there. And that's it. So, yeah, I was excited about what we were going to do, fully believing we would do it. In 2 weeks, I'd be back home. And then we arrived in Seychelles. I did a recce, checked on it, and there was numbers that were a little bit bigger than we were told about. The Koreans were there, and the Tanzanians, plenty of Tanzanians there. But so part of our task was to assemble our weapons, take them out of our bag, assemble the weapons, and then go and meet the advance party, but not acknowledge that we knew who they were. In case something happened, we were to create a diversion, fire at a few at the barracks, then drive off, and go back to the hotel. And everything was good. And I remember the colonel walking past, and it's strange because well-trained soldiers know the role they're in. And you see one of the guys, Kenny, the first thing he looked at me, his eyes went big, and he turned his head the other way. So quite a few of them I'd known from the Rhodesian Bush War. And as the last few were going through the clearing into the customs area, there was suddenly the colonel had sent a message back with Barney to say, look, we can go back to the hotel. We'll see us a bit later. And then all hell broke loose. One of the guys on the plane had taken his weapon out of the bottom of the K-light, assembled it, and thought he would show his officer that he was ready for it.
So is that what we call jumping the gun? Literally.
Jumping the gun. But, and of course, when they got to the immigration side there, and the guy looked at it, put his hand in the bag. There's another story here about fate and how life works. They picked up in the advance party on the Royal Air Swazi, had picked up 3 people, French people, on the way over, and thought that would help their cover. Well, one of the ladies in this group of 3 decided to bring some fruit in. Now, fruit is a no-no.
Yeah.
So they decided to check the last few bags. There was about 4 bags left. The first bag they put their hand in, picked up an AK-47. So the guy thought it was a spear gun. And he said, I'll take this and you can sign for it. And as he pulled it out, the magazine was AK-47 magazine. Of course, he yelled and panicked. There was a shootout in the baggage area there. One of our guys was killed, and one of their guys was killed. And it was just such a stupid mistake. In the army, they teach you don't think, just do what you're told. You don't think out the box and become more creative. And that was to start off a massive reaction from everybody. The colonel came up and said to me and to Barney, take your guys, you got your weapons? We said, yes. Go to the gate, make sure no one leaves the barracks, which is what we did do. I remember getting up to the gate. It was a little car that we had, and I was in the back. And old Roger takes his AK-47. We stop at the gate, and he walks up with a weapon sort of in front of him like this and said, have somebody left this behind? That was our way of bluffing our way in. Well, anyhow, the guard had heard the shooting down at the airport, took 2 and 2 together and opened fire on us. I was getting out, I took a shot through my right thigh and it blew half the muscle away. I didn't even know I'd been hit at that stage. But I remember lying down under a depression there, and these blokes had opened up with an anti-aircraft gun on us, and a rocket. So the hide car we had took a rocket straight through the front. It was there 1 minute and gone.
I'm assuming you were all out of the car at that point.
Yeah. And I was lying there and I thought, geez, what's that? I put my hands down on my leg, lying, and I saw blood. Then I was really cross. So I had to stand up, stood up like an absolute idiot with this AK-47 without a rifle butt. It was just 2 pistol grips. And kept shouting at this guy to stick his head up and fire above him, below him. Anyhow, we had to then leave and circle the military barracks to make sure the Tanzanians never got out. And sometime later that evening, I had gone up with Barney and a chap called Kenny Dalglish, and I just passed out, loss of blood. And I remember, I saw the shooting out taking down the bottom, and I saw that, and then I passed out. And when I came to, I heard this aircraft taking off. It was an Air India that had actually offered to fly out the rest of the mercenaries. I know they were head up for hijacking. It wasn't the case. Never was. But it didn't fit the narrative that the Seychelles government wanted to do. So it became a hijacking. And it was raining quite hard, and that what woke me up. So for the next 2 days, I was swanning around on the hillside, just moving at night and not moving during the day. And there was something like 78 soldiers on the hill looking for Barney and myself. And it was only the second night, late evening, I decided that I lost so much blood and I was not very strong. I'll go down, and I had a watch and things like that. And I'd go down to one of the little villages down there and ask them to give me a pair of trousers, a shirt, and I'd exchange it for my watch, and I walked back to the hotel. But as luck would have it, there was one political commissar, and I chose his house. You know, the old story, you never let go of your firearm. Such a relief. I put the firearm on the table. He gave me he's got his wife to give me a big jug of orange juice. And while I was busy drinking that, he picked my firearm up and arrested me. But I could see straight away he didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't trained in firearms. Now, my firearm was off safe with a full magazine. Well, quite a full magazine. And so I thought that was my time to go. It didn't work out like that. And all the fears that I have on being captured did come to fruition. You know, I was taken out of the police station, and the police were very, very good. There was a police lady there who came and gave me some water. And as I was about to take a drink of the water, one of the Tanzanians walked in and slapped the mug of water out of my hand, and gave her a good hiding too.
Oh, wow.
So I knew there was no messing around with this lot. I was then taken into Point Lowry Point Lowry. I'm trying to think of, I can't remember the name, but the barracks near where we were, the barracks that we'd been actually trying to stop people coming out. I was taken there, put into a cell probably 2.5 meters by 1.5 meters, totally black, no lights, and then started all the things that I'd envisaged happening did happen. You know, the hitting of the rifle butts and gouging my eye and all that.
And what
kind
was
of
going
stuff,
through your mind while all this was going on?
I think, you know, it's survival. You're doing your level best to try, but by this time I'd been handcuffed and hogtied. So there's nothing, I couldn't fight back with anything other than my language. And I never normally swear, but I found every swear word in the book. But that was also a good thing, because they realized that I was not going to go down fighting. And I told them my cover story was that I was in the Grey Scouts Army unit, which is a true story. I told them I was a cook, which is not a true story. But so that was my military experience. And one of my tasks on the Seychelles, once the coup was over, was to put the tapes on the radio Seychelles, take over the radio station. And I had worked at Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation prior to this, so I had a bit of knowledge on it. And that was my cover. But if you all trained at the same level, say if either you get captured and you all train at the same level, you'll always use the same amount of information to them that is fairly accurate, but not critical. So the story then carries on, and I think, well, that's it. Well, this beatings went on for quite a number of hours, you know, and they took great delight in putting a rifle butt between my legs where the my thigh had been shot out. But it's funny, pain goes away when you're under that extreme pressure. You don't really feel the pain. And after a number of episodes of more beatings, the only time they opened the door, the cell door, was to beat you, put the light on and beat you. or try and get some more information. But the other guys that had been captured were not military guys. And so Dolacek, who worked for the South African government, on the second day when they captured him, he said I could hear him in the cell next door saying he'll tell them everything because he's not a mercenary. He's there as an observer. So when I was asked, do I know Martin Dolacek? I said, no, never heard of the man. Then he says, Aubrey Brooks, I met him on Tuesday afternoon, 4 o'clock in Beauvalon Bay, blah, 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 and all that. So you get more hidings. And what happens is when they feel that they can get nothing more out of you, they will dispense of you. But every time somebody else was captured, they found out some more information. They come back to me again. Remember the last night in that cell, they would do what they call burking, put your head in a bucket of water and try and drown you and all that kind of jazz. Not a very nice experience, believe me. But I remember the last time I think, no, this is it. I can't keep going like this. So as I put my head in the water again, I remember saying the Lord's Prayer. Simple. I picked my head out again and I just said, please God, please let my family know I didn't mean to bring him any harm. I come to do this in my belief, And there was a sudden yell at the door in the cell, and take that prisoner back to his cell. And it happened to be Major Marengo, as a major who was part of the government, and he'd just arrived back on the island, and he hadn't had a chance to question me yet. So, but I remember in that process of saying that prayer, you've read about it in books, people may have heard of it, the orange glow and the peace. I know that when I do go and meet my Maker, it's not bad. It was a warm feeling, a nice, lovely orange glow in the presence, and then suddenly it was gone. So I do know that there is life after, and I do know it's a place of peace and love.
So it sounds like that fortified
so
you.
At that, yeah, and I think then I thought, if I was going to go, if there is a God, and there is one, he's a God of love. He's not a God of hate, So that strengthened the belief I had before, who took away all the doubt from the Rhodesian Bush War not about God, about the church. But I'd never let God go. I'd always had that in my thing. And that, without any shadow of doubt, that is what fortified me and got me through the next 2 years, of which 1.5 years was in death row. But yeah, so I think if you have a belief, whatever it is, whatever your religion, as long as you have a belief in something, it gives you something to cling on to be able to see your way through this thing. Without that, the same chap, Dolacek, I was talking about earlier, he was a non-believer, atheist. And at the beginning, sort of halfway through this whole scenario in our cell where we were held in solitary confinement, it was nearly 18 months in solitary. But he would sort of mock me when he heard me saying prayers and things like that. But yet when things go wrong, the first thing he would say is, Aubrey, say prayers for me. But so that period of time in prison in solitary, I knew two things. The most incredible thing is that there were 5 cells, which are just total concrete blocks. But my cell had a row of bricks, 1 brick high, about 4 feet long, cemented in for no reason. But I used that to walk up and down with my leg that had now gone sort of quite gammy. And then I would set myself 4 times a day. If I lay on my bed, I looked on the ceiling, I would see a mark that looked like Africa, looked like an elephant, looked like a shark. And it was like about 20 items that I would see. So I would count all 20 items 4 times a day. If I missed one, I'd recount it again to keep the brain active. I also found that because the first 7 months we had nothing, no books, no writing. And I decided to write 2 songs. I wrote 3, in fact, while I was there. But in order to write 3 songs, I had to memorize everything, and that was the chorus and the verse. And so these guards must have just thought I was bloody nuts. There was this prisoner on death row, and he's writing songs and singing music.
But it sounds like
But
it gave
over
you a
that
focal
period,
point to take your mind off the
it did.
monotony, but also the
Yeah.
threat.
Yeah, and then we were taken every 2 weeks back to the court for remand, and then remanded another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks. And it's funny how life works. What I didn't know was that both Barney and myself, our letters, any mail or anything coming to us, was confiscated by the army. So on a remand, we'd all go to the police station. They'd all get handed their mail, and Barney and I would get nothing. And then one day, the deputy commissioner of police said to me, Aubrey, you, how come, the commissioner, Mr. James Belay, wants to see you. So I was, okay, so I went up to the office, and I sat there, and he says to me, Mr. Aubrey, do you not have a family? I said, yes, I do. He says, have you got a wife? I said, yes, I have. He says, how come you get no mail? So I said, I have no idea. He says, do you have a telephone at your house? So I said, yes. He says, if I phone, will your wife be there? I said, yes. So I remember him telling me, see, this phone it's only one of 2 phones on the island that is not tapped. It's only clear line out. So he phoned my wife. And sure enough, Di was at home. She didn't leave the house for the first 9 months. Didn't ever leave. And it was just quite surreal, because having beatings and going back into your cells and all that, suddenly I'm sitting with this, and I just thought he was teasing me. But he found the house, and Di answered it. And he put the phone, gave me the phone. So I said to him before we made the call, my wife would not do anything that she thought would jeopardize my position here. And I remember Di answering the phone. I used to call her Chubby Chops in those days. And I said, Chubby, it's me, Orb. So he let me talk for about 3 minutes, and he took the phone away from me. Now, to think that could happen in any normal society is unbelievable. Here's a mercenary come into the country to overthrow my government, and now back in the prison, the chief of police is giving me a telephone to phone Di. So that sort of cements inside you this whole belief that if you believe strong enough, it'll happen. And that was that sort of period. I remember that one of the guards coming to me through 3 o'clock in the morning. We were kept in total light all the time. Lights on in the cell all the time. All single cells. He just come to the window and to the bars and say, Mr. Aubrey, please sing a song for me. I'll say, which one? Not the sad song. So we created a rapport with these people. But they didn't beat us up anymore. And we ate what they ate. Fish and rice twice a day, cup of tea in the morning, a slice of bread, and that was it. But that period of my life gave me a chance to look back on myself. And I say it now, and I don't mean to sound facetious by it, but I'd rather like the guy I was looking at. I think I had a good heart. I helped people. I worked hard. Some dumb choices in my life, but by and large, I rather like the guy I was looking at. And I think that makes it a lot more easier for you if you're comfortable within who you are and what you're doing. Obviously, I didn't like being stuck in that position. And that was to last quite a few months until one morning, around about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, the cell lights went off in our cells. Now, that's an unusual thing. We've been in total light for the last 8 months, just suddenly goes dark. So I shouted out to old Henry Victor, Sergeant Henry Victor, and I said to him, "Sergeant, what's happened here?" He says, "Don't you worry. You just keep down. Everything's all right." And then the daylight came, and we could see around outside. And what, unbeknown to us, that the guards in our cell, in our prison block, had captured two loyal soldiers, a lieutenant and a warrant officer. They wanted one of the military junta, one of the majors, to be kicked out of the government, and that was what started the mutiny in our barracks. Wow. And it was quite strange because they were coming to us and saying, "If we give you guns, will you fight for us?" And of course, the correct answer is yes. Would you help with them? No. But every time they came to us and said, "Look, we're going to go fetch firearms from the armory. You're sure you're going to help us?" And the more we try to convince them we would, the less they're likely to believe us. So for the next 3 days, they threw something like 54 mortar bombs at us. Only person that got injured out of the mercenaries, a chap called Jerry Purin. He was diving under his bedroom. You had the discharge of the mortar leaving the barrel, and you could hear it coming towards you. And he just dived under a bed and cut his knee.
Okay.
But they killed 73 of their own people.
Wow.
Pigs. Have you heard the expression, screaming like a stuck pig?
Yep.
They killed 4 or 5 pigs, chickens. And it's just amazing because we were in the top floor of the prison. And all the injuries were around us. And that went on for, as I say, 3 days. One of the funniest things I ever saw was looking out of between my burglar bars down into my guards, the guards on my windows. Down in front of me was the courtyard where the soldiers would have their tea. And I saw the little bread van. I used to watch him most days come up and deliver bread. And this bloke had driven his car up in the middle of a mortaring attack, straight through all the mortar bombs. He was busy arguing with one of the corporals down there who signed for the bread.
Business as usual.
The next minute the bomb went off just behind him. All I remember seeing is just a wheel spin, this car flying around, dust. And I should imagine him getting back to his wife and telling her what had happened. He was standing delivering bread, and this mortar nearly hit him. But that part was that whole episode happened quite quickly. It was 3.5 days, I think. But one of the guys, old Roger England, managed to he was the only bloke not in a proper cell. He was in the old visiting room, which had wooden slats on it, on the roof. He managed to get out, get the keys, let us all out. We then went down to the kitchen, which we thought was the safest place in the barracks. And on the way down, we managed to release these 2 hostages, the officer and the warrant officer. And then we locked ourselves in the kitchen. It was quite uncanny because we were listening to Radio Seychelles every day. That's another thing that I must just mention here too. When I was first captured, they kept you in this dark room, this dark cell, and just beat the hell out of you. The reason for putting you in dark places is to disorientate you. But the guard room had their radio playing all the time. Good morning, it's Radio Seychelles.
Right. So you could still tell what time of day it was.
So you manage those little things. It's just they were not. The Seychelles people are actually people of love, not of anger. And they have no idea. So everything they tried to do, like this disorientation, didn't work. But now months later, I'm sitting in the kitchen down there with the rest of the guys, and we're getting stuck into some food, some decent food for a change. And you hear them saying, "We have got mercenary Aubrey Brooks and Roger England. We're going to kill them. Then if that doesn't happen, then we're going to kill the officer." They didn't know we'd let them out. And then one of the guys found a radio in the kitchen, a 2-way radio, picked up on the channel, and it was, I think Roger may have been the one, I'm not sure. or could be Barney. And they spoke to the loyal troops and said, look, we're actually now in the kitchen. We've released your 2 officers. And the blokes outside are already not in a fit state to fight anymore. They were smoking dacha or taking drugs, lots of drinks to give them courage during the 2 days of their short war. And next minute there was a big barrage, and everything died down. The doors opened, and it was the loyal troops. That changed our whole situation in the Seychelles, because we'd now saved 2 of their officers, and they could now find a way forward for us to be released one day. So from going into our solitary cells, the 7 of us were put into the laundry, and our cells, each one of our cells, housed something like 25 of our former guards who are now in our cells.
Wow. complete turnaround.
Walking past, yeah, you see, I always say in life, I often ask, because did I ever contemplate suicide? Can I go that way just for a second? Because I did think about that. Prior to my capture, I thought, if they get me, this is what they're going to do to me. And as it turned out, it was exactly what they did to me. I put the firearm to my head, and I couldn't pull the trigger. I think the will to live is that much so great that I just didn't do it, you see. And so people say to me about, is it, would you consider suicide? No. But I can't tell you whether a person who commits suicide is ill, a coward, or wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's whatever fits that person at that time. But knowing now, at the drop of a hat, the world can turn on a ticky. One day you're in a cell condemned to death. The next day you're in a laundry, and your guards are now sitting in your cell, and they're going to face the same penalty that you've just come from. So one never knows what's around the corner. Just have a belief that you're going to get there. You're going to make it. And so that's what happened in that particular period of our life. Lots of things went on there. There was a chap by the name of Ash, who was a South African, who the Seychelles, not the Seychelles Defence Force, but the Tanzanians had captured. And we heard all the planning of what they're going to do with him. And then they shot him, stuck him in a car with a lot of pamphlets, and blew the car up. So there's a lot of those things happen. And your life is like on a roller coaster. You're feeling comfortable, and then something else happens, and then the lights go out. Yeah. And then one night, they came to me and said, he has a pair of shorts and a shirt. So I said, and what's that for? No, don't you worry. We'll tell you. Just get dressed now. And at about 7 o'clock in the evening, we were shuffled out of our cells for the first time together and taken down into a BDRM, troop carrier, and with about 14 guards in the van with us. And we weren't allowed to talk to each other. And I asked where we're going. You don't mind. But part of my recce was to actually do a recce on the presidential palace. So if we're going to go there ultimately. And next morning we're going through Mahe itself, through Victoria. And there's a little flap on the side of the van, kept blowing open. And then I suddenly realized where we were headed. I thought, well, this can't be good. And sure enough, we ended up at the president's palace. I remember getting out of the van, and there were just lots of shrubs I hadn't seen there before. Like, little did I know they were all troops, probably about 60, 70 troops. They took the 4 of us, and took us up to the presidential palace. We were met by the deputy prime minister. No, sorry, the deputy commissioner. Max. I've forgotten his surname now. And we were ushered into the president's office. Go through the door. There's a little desk on the right-hand side with him sitting behind it. He was a very short in stature. And he said, "Come in." They had 4 chairs there for us. And he told the deputy commissioner to leave him alone. And the deputy commissioner was not happy about this. Anyhow, that happened. And he looked at us and said, "Gentlemen, I take it you know who I am." None of us answered at that stage. He says, "I'm the man you came to kill." And I said, "No, we didn't do that, sir. We came to overthrow your government, but not to kill you." So he looked at me and says, "You're Frank Brooks, aren't you?" For whatever reason, they called me Frank. My second name is Frank, but they wouldn't use the word Aubrey, So, and I thought, well, that's not nice. The president knows exactly who I am. And he says, "What I can tell you is your wife is here on the island right now." And I said, "I'm aware of that." He says, "And she's done you all a big favor. She's become a very good friend of the people of the Seychelles. You can be very lucky." And then the next big mistake I asked, he said, "Well, what is the reason you came to overthrow my government?" And I said to him, "Well, it's communist government." And he shot up out of his chair. Well, didn't go much higher because he was a very short little chap. And he says, "We're not communists, we're socialists." So I said to him, "Yes, Mr. President, but a socialist is a communist who's just using the money from the social reforms." And anyhow, he went to great lengths to explain to the difference between socialism and communism. And he was the furthest thing from a communist he could ever be. Anyhow, he said, "Look, what you guys have done in saving the lives of our officers, we have a problem trying to get you away from here now. But we had an appeal pending because in the court case, they found us guilty of high treason." Now, our barrister was a chap called Nicholas Fairbairn, and he was going to take it to the European Court of Human Rights and all that. And you cannot be found guilty of treason as a non-national. But we were found guilty of treason, of waging war against the country, importing arms of war. And so he was going to take this to the appeal court. And he says, what we'll do is I can assure you that you will go home one day, but I need you to drop the appeal. So anyhow, he said, "I want your answer, and then I'll make further decisions." We were sent back to our communal cell. And then we got hold of our attorney who was on the island and said that we want to drop the appeal, and told him why. Well, he told us no, not under any circumstances.
It's a big gamble, isn't it?
It is, but they had all the information. I think before my trial, they had 70 odd people that said I had shot them. The big bloke with the big beard, he's the one that shot me. And so they were just shooting wildly, so winging each other and shooting each other. And suddenly, every one of them was lined up to say I had shot them. So at the next remand we had, I was on the island at the stage for the court case. And he said after the morning session, we went down to have tea down the bottom, and he said to us, "You guys, the things may be commuted to life sentences and things like that." He says, "But you, Aubrey, you're going. They need a scapegoat, not a scapegoat, but they need to make a strong decision against you, and you will die." Well, that die gave him the biggest rocket he's ever had in his life. And I'm trying to think of the guy's name, Hanlon. And she said she will find another attorney. And that's when they found Nicholas Fairbairn. But so life is strange because it's a lot of ups and downs, and it's what you make of what you do with it. And the more precarious your position is, the more you have to think out of the box. So life ended up after that point in time. It was our sentences. I remember thinking in court when our trial had finished. It was a Friday afternoon, and the James Earl Seaton was the Justice James Earl Seaton was the presiding judge, and it was quite a weird thing because here's this black guy with a big white wig, red robes, and when he's talking between the defense and the prosecutors, it's like a game of tennis. You're watching go this way, that way, this way, that way, And all they were trying to do was to create a position for the world to see how much damage we'd done to the Seychelles. I remember up on the hill before I was captured, watching Tanzanians walk up to this Fokker Friendship, the aircraft that they'd flown in, stood in front of it and put a rocket straight through it. They went down. I could watch them down in the terminal building, kicking doors and taking all the stuff out of the shops, and so all the damage they were doing, they wanted to say it was us, and how bad we were, and how the reparations must be, and all that kind of jazz. And so the whole thing was a big facade. Even our trial was a big facade. I mean, the fact that they found us guilty of high treason. The day we were sentenced, late afternoon, and the presiding judge, we'd finished our closing argument, and the presiding judge said, and we went and had afternoon tea, and Nicholas Faber, and we said to him, "What's going to happen now?" He says, "It's highly unlikely you make a decision today. You have to deliver on all what we've done, and it'll probably be Monday." Straight away, we go back into the courtroom. We back handcuffed to the railing in front, and he says, "Well, before sentencing, do you have anything to say?" He called me up first. So I'm thinking now, I just said to him, "Look, yes, Your Honor, I would just like to apologize, not only to my family and friends, but to your people and those people who have been injured. I didn't come to create this kind of problem. I thought I was doing right. I felt I was doing right." And he said, "Well, that's good of you. I sentence you to death."
Wow.
But I was well behaved, well mannered, because I thank you, Your Honor. And I've sat down. That's a stupid thing to say, Anyhow, I carried out.
And how are you feeling when you heard that?
My biggest thing was when that happened, because it happened too quickly, because we were anticipating this being on the Monday. And I remember Di sitting in the gallery above she had two police ladies with her. And I've read loads of articles. The press are an amazing thing, what they can do with the truth. But I remember looking at Di when he said that, and she was just absolutely dead still. The police lady grabbed her hand and just held her hand. And I always knew the possibility was there. Didn't like to believe it would happen, but I was at that stage ready to fight further. But I knew one thing: once we were taken out in front of the world press, they couldn't now go and kill us in our cell or anything like that. So we were on a better side of the law at that stage. And so it was a little bit, I kept my emotions quite in good control. But the next court hearing we had, I was standing we were walking into the courtroom, and I saw Dice standing at the top of the steps, and this Seychelles, not Tanzanian guard, went up to push her away. Thank heavens I was handcuffed at that stage to Barney Carey, and I was going to go after him. He said, "Good God, well, we don't. Just Just let it slide, because you go out and start
Make it worse.
fanning people that's going to show you. So anyhow, that period of life was. I look back on it now, and I was comfortable. I was getting myself fit again. I could walk.
Yeah.
Because, the roller coaster was coming to an end at that stage. Because when they took us back after the about halfway through our original 2 weeks, my leg had gone gangrenous.
Yeah.
And the smell was terrible. So they took us to hospital. And there was a the doctor in the hospital was a chap called Dr. Fosbury. He was, he's now is the head of health in St. Kitts in the West Indies. But as life would have it, everything happens for a reason in life. When Barney was at school in Kenya, his mom asked him, which language do you want to learn? And she was pushing him to learn French. And he said Swahili. So she said to him, Swahili, why? You'll never use that in your life. But what had happened was that in the back in out, we had a 2-bedded cell ward. Barney and I handcuffed to these things. And he heard them saying, these Tanzanians, saying they took all the stuff out of the side cabinets in our ward. Those old beds in hospitals, the wrought iron around it, we were handcuffed to that. And they were going to shoot us one each in the chest, take us into the passage.
Right.
And then
you wouldn't have known that
if
he didn't speak the language.
He didn't know. So he told me what was happening. So I shouted for the nurse. Never forget her name. I can never forget her face. Nurse Betsy was her name. And I said to her, these people want to shoot us. Can you get some help? And I didn't think about the doctor. Next minute, he prayed in front of us. And I looked at him and thought, looks more like a hippie than a doctor. He looked very similar to it. I have a long ponytail now. And this doctor came in with this long ponytail. And he turned and said to them, I am the doctor in charge of this hospital. I'm mending these people. I'm mending your guys upstairs. And if you want to get to them, you have to kill me first. Anyhow, they walked off and muttered. It was short-lived because it lasted exactly 12 hours and they abducted us and took us back to the barracks again. But the doctor what an amazing guy. So all these things happen so quickly, and it's just by circumstance. I mean, why would Barney have learned Swahili?
Yeah.
So I think life's plan is out there.
Yeah.
You have to find a way of negotiating it, getting through it, and the more skills you have in your life, the better, more adept you
Absolutely. Flexibility.
Coming out on the other side. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just conscious we're coming into the last couple of minutes of the show now. Tell us how all this resolved itself. Because obviously you're here now.
Yeah, we were out taken after the mutiny. We were sent out to an island called Ile de Plat, which is the old president's island where he goes on holiday. So we had about 115, 130 guards looking after 6 of us. But and it was during that period that we had a visit from the Times on Sunday magazine, and the one of the ladies there, I've got her name right now. I can't remember it, but we were taken around. A whole lot of things happened there. We had a vegetable garden growing, and then the new guard commander came and he said, Jerry Purin asked him for some insecticide because the caterpillars were eating it. And he said, no, what you need to do is just spray it with this. And it was weed killer. So we killed the whole garden. So we had to take them around all over the place and show them what we did. I spent every day along with Barney walking the island, looking for places where the turtles had come out to lay eggs, wiping all the bloody movement of the sand prints out so that they were left untouched. and collecting shells. So we went out to the top end of the island, and she said to me, "What would you say if I told you were going home soon?" So I said, "I would believe that." She said, "Really?" I said, "Yes." Because the aircraft flew into Seychelles every Saturday. So every Friday night, I packed my stuff ready to go. I am the eternal optimist. Anyhow, she told me this, and she said, "Please don't say it to anybody until we're gone." And then we were flown back to Mahe, and then was a problem. They didn't have enough money for our air tickets to fly us back to South Africa. And it was, so it ended up, at the end of it, the big turning points were us saving the lives of those officers. I think our conduct in prison was also very good too. None of us were absolutely full of it, and just giving it to them. We just acted as normal as possible, professional soldiers, and made friends with everybody. The major and myself and Di, when she was there for about 6 weeks, every second day we'd have a meeting. The first meeting was in his office for about 20 minutes. And we quickly gleaned that if we included him in our conversation, it could carry on till eventually 2 hours, And then we were given a full presidential pardon. The 4 of us that were sentenced to death all got full presidential pardons, which is rather nice for me, because even though I've had all those charges against me, there's no record. And that was it. So looking back on the whole exercise, it was a good thing to have happened to me, because I came out of it. I learned a lot about myself, about life, about the church, about beliefs, all sorts of things. And I know that if I ever go back to prison again, and I get a choice of solitary confinement or communal cell, I'll take solitary confinement every time.
Interesting. Hopefully you don't have to make that choice again.
No, absolutely. There's so much, but all good, It's roller coaster of life.
Aubrey, it's been absolutely fascinating, and just in terms of what you've already told us, we could dig a lot deeper. It'd be great to have you back again at some point in the future. But if people want to find out more about your book or things that you're working on at the moment, where can they go to find out more?
Okay, I've got a web page on Facebook. I've got a web page. It's called aubreybrooks.com. I have Facebook page with Death Row in Paradise, the name of my book. I'm also in the process of now doing an audio book of Death Row in Paradise, and about to write another book now.
Oh, and what's that one?
Called Ordinary Man, Extraordinary Life, a life well lived. I've done so much in my life, and it's wonderful. On Valentine's Day, I turned 82, and I still have got lots more to do, and things like that. So that roughly is it, in a nutshell.
Yeah. And it certainly has been an extraordinary life. Aubrey Brooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks very much indeed. Take care.
This is the business of thinking. Mastery doesn't end here. See you in the next episode.